Okay, you're good.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the school board meeting tonight. We will start with an adoption of the agenda. You have it in front of you. We have no minutes for 4A, so we're going to strike that. That's the only correction. So,
That's a move, John.
okay, motion by David.
I'll second.
Seconded by Gina to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Okay. We have no delegations. We have the consent agenda. We'll look down it. Bills, treasurer's report, and addendum 1 for substitute teachers. If you had a chance to look that over. Okay, motion by Gina, seconded by Patty, to approve the items listed on the consent agenda consisting of approve payment of bills, approve the treasurer's report, approve the clerk's report, and approve the 21-22 substitute teacher list as presented in addendum 1. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Okay, now we have Kelly Schneider with our Lincoln County Rec Commission report.
Where do you want me to go first? Stand, go to the stand, whatever. Okay, so we basically spent a lot of our time the other day going over our player, parent, and coach code of conduct. We've made a lot of changes. We got rid of a lot of double speak. We're looking at collaborating with the chamber for a softball tournament and possibly a fun run, a Santa fun run in December. She's working on a basketball clinic with Bethany, and we talked about fall sports registration. Currently, that's going on till August 13th for kickball, which is your preschoolers and kindergartners, Little Setters volleyball, which is your 1st through 3rd graders, 4th through 6th volleyball. That's where we've made that change, where they're going to go to Minneapolis. Minneapolis will come to us, Bennington, and we're going to play some competitive. And then we have 1st through 2nd flag football and 3rd through 4th flag football. So the registration ends on the 13th. Late registration will go to the 20th. And we're having a coaches meeting on August 25th, referee meeting on the 8th, and that's about, we talked about getting our pitching machines fixed and bat grips and just trying to get equipment put back where it needs to be. And that's about all we talked about.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Do you have a motion to accept that?
No,
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Moving on, we have the COVID update with Lincoln County Health Department.
you're ready for me already.
While she's passing stuff out, this is just something that we need to address again for the school year. CDC has recommendations, Kansas Department of Health has recommendations, and what they are saying are masks are recommended, but there is no entity at this point that's mandating masks. There is a federal law, and if you want to pass those around, I'll pick one. I have a letter that I was going to put out to our parents about busing. There is a federal order from the CDC about school buses and what they're calling conveyances, which is any school vehicle. And they are requiring masks on buses, school vehicles, activity buses, anything of that nature. So that is something that we do not have home rule over, we don't have local control over, it's a federal order. It's interesting, but it's just, it is what it is, and so we can't do anything about that. I've talked to DS Bus Lines a couple times. They understand the order and they're planning on following the order. So that is federal mandate, not state. And school boards only have home rule, local control over state issues. So that being said, I asked LaDonna to come, and I appreciate that because she can give you information about new quarantine and things like that, and I thought you'd get a much better explanation than me being the segue between us both. So thank you, LaDonna.
I did go ahead and Dr. Marcelino and Dr. Marcelino is my medical consultant. He's from Douglas County. He is the Douglas County public health officer. He works 1 day a week at their health department, and then he has his own medical clinic that he works in also. He has a home in Canopus. That's how we're kind of connected, where he's our medical consultant, because we didn't have an MD in Lincoln for a long time. So we did work together kind of on a letter that kind of explains where we're at. KDHE plus the medical consultant, CDC, everyone is recommending, highly recommending masks in the school setting. That doesn't mean that the school board has to do that. Most school boards in Kansas up to this point that I've heard of are not requiring masks, but it is highly recommended, particularly for those students who might be immunocompromised or the teachers who are immunocompromised. I think it's just going to have to be a choice. If I had a child that was possibly their immune system was low, I'd probably send my child with a mask. If I had a perfectly healthy child, that might not be the case. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. So I am following my medical consultant's guidance and KDHE's in saying that our public health officer, myself, would recommend that masks be highly considered in a classroom. Right now, the Delta variant could be in our county. We've sent out tests. We don't have any results back from that, but as of today, we have 11 active cases. About 5 fell off from last week and 5 new ones came on. So in the last 2 weeks, we're up about 15, 16 cases. 2 of those involve families with children. So it's not, and the kids, some of them are pretty sick and some of them don't have hardly any symptoms. So as with COVID and everything, you just never know how someone is going to respond to the disease. So I could tell you our vaccination rates are about 42%, somewhere in there. It's higher in 65 and older. We're in the 70th percentile. And between 12 and 18, I can probably count on one hand how many kids we had get vaccinated. So talking about teachers, about 50%, I would say. So, you're talking about a large group of unvaccinated people in closer settings, which is how the Delta variant spreads 2 times faster than the regular variants that we've seen come around. And some physicians are saying it's as contagious as chickenpox. And some of us are old enough to remember when one kid in the classroom got chickenpox, everybody did. So it's a much more contagious variant. That being said, even having 11 cases is not, we are high, if you look on the CDC map, with the percentage of cases versus the percentage of tests. And most people don't come and get tested unless they're symptomatic. So the fact that we have 15 positives out of 20 tests doesn't surprise me at all. And that puts us in the high category alone. So I don't know if we'll ever get out of the high category because we don't do enough testing. So that's just kind of how that falls. I know nobody wants to see our kids in masks, so if that is the route you go, there's no, last year when we wore masks, if there was kids exposed, as long as they were both wearing masks, they didn't have to quarantine. Those kiddos just had to watch and see if they developed any symptoms. So I just think that part of your decision needs to weigh on if we have a child in the classroom that's positive, what we'll probably start with is the kids right next to them within 6 feet. Perhaps if a para works on them with them face to face for longer than 10 to 15 minutes within 6 feet, we might have to quarantine that para or the teacher if they're that close. The rest of the classroom, I think there's other things we can do. I think we can ask that classroom to mask for 10 days, see if anybody becomes symptomatic, and if nobody does, we can go on our way. KDHE is also offering a testing strategy, which is what I copied off for you guys. You could, and when I talk about testing, they're talking about just right inside the nose, not clear up their nostril to the brains, but just right inside the nose, can run a rapid test. KDHE has funds to hire someone to do that, if you could find someone to do that, and for the test kits and for everything. But I don't think a lot of parents are real excited about testing. I think that's kind of in the same realm as masks. But they're going to have to understand that their child may get quarantined. The whole classroom may get quarantined. That's a given, because particularly if we do get notified that Delta variant is in our community, we know it's going to spread like wildfire. Now, when we talk about team sports, that's a whole nother question, and Keisha hasn't come out with any guidelines yet that I know of. So, how we deal with that, I wish I could just give you a flat answer. This is how we're going to deal with that, but I can't. I think everything needs to be pretty much on a case-by-case basis. A group of second graders who stay together pretty much, you could probably pick the 6 foot around because they have assigned seating, and it wouldn't be too hard. Maybe a high school student, it would be a whole different scenario if they're in every classroom in the building. So still might work on the kids right within their area, but that might be 4 kids out of every classroom. And we're not be talking about a lot more kids quarantine. And again, with sports, it's just hard to know. Outdoor practices, outdoors, they're not recommending masks because there's finding that it's not really transmitted that much. It's in the locker rooms, volleyball, those kinds of things where you're inside next to each other a lot. So they do talk about, and I did include it with my letter about, it's kind of, I don't have a picture of the Swiss cheese model, but that's kind of what they're going about now. If you have several layers of Swiss cheese and there's a different hole in different spots, say good hand washing is one slice, and vaccination is one slice, and mask is one slice, and cleaning your areas, your every part you do to mitigate it helps. Which is the best part, who knows, but every little part you can do helps. So if you're not going to mask, there's other things, and I was gonna, I guess it's on the front here. Promoting vaccine, which in our we can do vaccine for 12 and older. We've heard today that hopefully by the end of the year they'll have the studies done between ages 5 and 12. That still doesn't mean parents are going to get kids vaccinated, but it will be available hopefully. Physical distancing, I would still recommend that those classrooms, the kiddos, be distanced as far apart as they can be. Use of the plexiglass and the same things that we did last time. Keep them in their little clusters. Don't mix the classrooms up a lot of the time and things like that. I would suggest that you continue that. Screening, testing, and contact contact tracing as kind of like excluding people that are sick, and just paying more attention to kids who are sick. The bad part about that, without masks, is we're not gonna know if they have the flu, just a common cold, coronavirus. They all look kind of similar. So there's not gonna be any way to go to know unless there's testing done. They're talking about there are some testing kits that will identify influenza A, influenza B, and coronavirus that the schools could get. So you could test a kid with parental consent, obviously, if that situation came up. But there's just no way to know. Do you require them to go to the doctor? Do they stay home for 48 hours after their fevers? It's just hard to know how we're going to determine whether or not it's a COVID case without a test. So, and I wish I had better answers for parents too, because I can understand how you can feel when my child just has a cold. Well, you know, and the people I interview with positive COVID, 90% of them, oh, it's just a sinus infection. Oh, I just thought I had a cold. Oh, it was just allergies. You know, it's very similar to other things that we see. So there's just really no way to know unless they're tested. So, you know, I don't know. I can tell you the health department doesn't have the manpower to test a classroom every morning for 10 days if you had a case in your classroom. I don't know if you can, I mean, KDG is willing to work with the school, but I don't know if there's a person out there who wants that job. You know what I mean? I know you still haven't got a full-time or whatever school nurse, but you know, it's just really hard. So I think there is also some testing strategies, test to play, that schools are testing their football players twice a week. I don't know on which days. I have not really read this testing really in depth. I was waiting for Keisha to come out with something so we could kind of make a plan that way. But I don't know how the parents have been about if testing is completely off the table. But I can see you guys, you know, my only decision making that I have is by the statutes that let me isolate and quarantine people. But if I say someone's going to have to be quarantined for 10 days, the school board, you know, the SB 40 bill that I think Johnson County judge has ruled is not correct, may still apply to you guys, and that you could let a quarantine student come to school. But I've quarantined them to home, so leaving their house breaks my quarantine. Am I going to call a law on them? Probably not, but I would hope that the school board would have that discussion with me. You know, if I'm going to quarantine families and you're going to say let everybody come to school no matter what happens, you know, obviously we're not working together, and we need to work together to decide, you know, how we're going to, and it has been in several articles I've read, Delta's just spiked, and just dropped. And cases have leveled out. That may happen to us. We may have already hit our spike and we're going to level out again. There's always another variant, unfortunately. Will it be a worse variant or a pretty calm variant? We just don't know. So do you guys have questions for me that I can answer tonight? I mean, need more information. Say our case rate right now is pretty high, but again, we only do limited testing, so.
I think that is good for people to know too, is
Yes.
that you're comparing apples to apples. If
Right.
it looks like we're high, it's because
Right.
not that many tests.
If we did 100 tests and 50 of them were positive and then we were really high, then I would be concerned. But I'm not concerned that most of the people that we have tested have come in symptomatic, and that's, you know, mostly well people don't get tested a lot.
I'm sure you said this, but to clarify, if, say we have a classroom or something at the high school, if some of those kids have been vaccinated or have been wearing a mask, they're probably not gonna be required to quarantine? If,
If they're vaccinated, they will not be required to quarantine. We'll just kind of have them self-monitor and if they show any symptoms.
okay.
Because there has been breakthrough cases. We've had 3 in our county out of the uptick in cases. We've had 3 that are breakthrough cases. So that does happen.
Right.
No vaccine is 100% effective.
Yes.
It depends on age and your immune system and all that. How effective the vaccine is for you. So, masks, if you know, it's been a double mask kind of policy. KDHE doesn't even support that. They're like, it doesn't matter if you're wearing a mask or not. But if 2 people are wearing masks, I pretty much will not quarantine that. That's what I did last year, and that's what I'm comfortable with. We didn't see a lot of kids, you know, even when I quarantined a bunch of kids, I think there was only 1 team that actually another player did test positive for COVID. So, you know, we only quarantined a couple times, not too many, so that wasn't too bad. It's gonna be I think at best it's gonna be a difficult year, but trying to work together to make some of these decisions and to support the parents. I understand parents completely. Like I said, I'm not sure. I wear a mask 90% of the time in my office. I don't like it either. I get it. So it's yeah. And it seems like a step backwards. We were kind of over all that. Everybody was enjoying being, you know, out of that, and now we're right back into it. So
For better or for worse, we have remained somewhat isolated in our bubble.
right,
since we-
right, yeah. And that may continue. It
Yes.
depends on how much people travel and things like that. You know, outside of it.
Right. Any other questions?
I would just ramble for a second in case it spurs a question. So, you know, when the school year ended, I was very hopeful we wouldn't have this discussion ever again, but here we are. I think the board, I think we need to come up with a decision so that everybody understands where we are this evening. I know that there are challenges with the quarantines. I talked to the staff this morning that, you know, here we are again. And I think I can say confidently that our staff will do what they need to do if we have to quarantine and have partial remote kind of stuff. There are some very big challenges because the state legislature passed a law that you cannot remote teach a student for more than 40 hours in a school year. So 1 quarantine will exceed what we can remote teach a student. After that point, they have to be considered a virtual student. And in June, we have to report any students that were 40 hours or more remote taught, and they will fund them as a remote student and take away the normal FTE and reduce funding over it. So that's their teeth behind their 40-hour thing. LaDonna and I talked when we had our meeting with 299, and we talked about it's one thing to mask elementary classes together all the time, but if you have 1 class in the high school and then those kids scattered all other classes, then we've got this real accountability problem because then you have to shoot out a list. Mrs. Flynn will have to shoot out a list to say that these following students are supposed to have masks on for the next 10 days. And then every teacher has to become the mask police of, wait a minute, you're on this list, and aren't you supposed to do this? And so there's a lot of logistics problems with that type of a masking, a partial masking at the high school. Just so you know, we're going to continue with the cleaning protocols just like last year. My expectation is that the buildings get fogged and the surfaces get clean and the teachers clean desks. So that's what we talked about in an admin meeting. LaDonna's right, Keisha is not going out on a limb on anything on this. They have made no comments about spectators, about sports or anything. And probably like last year, they will remain as silent as possible until the last minute. There are funds available for rapid test kits for schools. I just don't think that's our role personally, and I just don't think we're a medical testing center. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Whether that would help or hinder, I don't know. It's a board decision, but I know you have expectations that I make recommendations, and I just don't know that we have the personnel nor the expertise to administer tests on a daily basis like that. And then lastly, I guess, just so you have something to feed off of, it would be my recommendation that we make a statement somewhat like we recommend masks, but they are not mandated. If you have any health concerns, you are more than free to make that masking choice for your health concerns. And if you want to make a choice that you don't have a mask, then you don't have to do that either. I don't think we have to make it a good guy, bad guy thing. I think we make it a personal choice thing. But I do think we have to recognize at least that CDC and Kansas Department of Health, they are saying, they're making a statement that I think we need to recognize, and that is that they're recommended as one of those layers of, I don't know what you want to call it, safety or mitigation. That's the word I'm looking for. It's just a layer of mitigation that we can give our patrons, our students, our parents a choice to make on their behalf. And then we'll just have to play it by ear. I mean, we'll see what happens. Who knows?
The other thing I wanted to mention is we are available to come on site to give vaccine with parental consent, but like we do the flu shots, but that's something I think you need to talk about as a board. We would, as we have with our other big pod sites, we would have EMS available. With any new vaccine, there's always the risk that you could have an anaphylactic reaction, but that's with a tetanus shot or any shot. I think they're just being overly cautious with the COVID vaccine. That we have emergency epinephrine and either EMS or somebody medical, they have to be monitored for about 15 minutes after the shot. That you may not feel like the school is the appropriate place that happened. Some school districts are allowing that to happen and some are not. So, alternative to that, we can set up some Saturdays and things like that we would set aside just for schools. So, there's other options because vaccination is our responsibility. That's what we do. So, when I say we couldn't come over and test every kid in a classroom every morning, we couldn't. If they would come to us, we probably could. But, vaccination is another thing, and we'll gladly do that if that's something the board wants us to do, but you may not feel like kids, with a flu shot, we give them a shot and send them back to their classroom. This way, we probably keep them for 15 minutes or so in the gym or something where they could be monitored by EMS. We haven't had to use EMS at any time. Have only had one reaction to somebody who already had a lot of other allergies, so and given over 1,500 shots, so that makes me feel good. But yeah, we are extra. The recommendation is that we wait 15 minutes with the first shot and about 10 or so with the second shot. So.
What brand of vaccine are you dispensing?
We have Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, and the pharmacy has Moderna. Right now, Pfizer is the only one for 12 and older. Johnson & Johnson are the whole state's doses outdate here later on. I think the first week in September, and there is no more available right now. So I don't know if there'll be more stock to get Moderna back or not. That's just a one shot. And Moderna is kind of, they're discussing Moderna's studies in 12 to 17-year-old population. I would imagine before the end of the year, Moderna will be available for 12 and older. So we've kind of not carried Moderna since the first part of our vaccine pharmacy and I both carried it, and it's, you know, to get the outdates out, it's kind of, but once Pfizer went to 12 and older, we just switched to Pfizer and let the pharmacy take care of it, so. And there's people getting vaccinated all, you know, in Salina, at the VA, all kinds of different places, you know. But we would be willing to set up specific times for the schools or come to the schools, depending on how the board feels about that.
You said Keisha currently has no spectator limitation, nothing, so there's been a couple questions whether our sporting events will have any, so currently there's no
They haven't said
restrictions on sporting events.
They haven't said a word.
Okay,
They
so,
just sent out their announcements for August and nothing even spoke of COVID in it.
okay, just so people are aware, that's
Nobody didn't
where we
follow
sit.
last year's recommendations, no, I see. I haven't seen anything either.
Just so everybody's on the same page there. Questions? Thank you. Any other questions for Lynn?
Thank you, Donna.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Back where it was.
Any discussion? We probably need to have some sort of recommendation, motion, agreement as a board as to what we want to say, how we want to proceed, so that our students know whether we want to go with recommended or optional or,
Want that motion?
yes, or as a motion, whichever. Discussion.
I was just
I'll
gonna.
lead around the table,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, that's what, I was just gonna say, I would leave it, I mean, I said recommended, but not required. I mean, at this point in time, we have to change that later on, I mean, to COVID or whatever, but. I'll leave it to that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel too, it's recommended, that not required, and then if things change down the road, we will revisit it, unfortunately.
My opinion also, I believe we live in a free world yet still, and people can wear it if they want to, need to. But don't have to.
And same thing, I believe masking is a personal choice. I don't think that we should be telling people that they have to wear a mask. It should be a family decision.
okay. And that's how I feel also, that it should be, we can leave it up to their recommendation, and I don't want to see our kids back in masks, hopefully. If we can go this year without it, it would be wonderful. We can't guarantee that, she just said we don't know what's gonna happen, so, but we can start the year off.
I would say, I'll monitor it real close and I'll be in contact with Dawn when things change. But if you remember the year before I came, we had 20% of our student population out with the regular flu, and the school was closed for 4 school days, or something like that. So much like the regular flu, we'll just react to what needs to happen, and if we need to have a special board meeting and reconvene on the issue, but there's gonna have to be a tipping point for that to happen, I think.
Does that fit your consensus, or more formal
I
action?
think we're good to go. I think we need a motion, but
Okay, sounds good. Moving on. Insurance review, addendum 2.
so when I told you about our increase in insurance premium and the over $30,000 in the last 2 years, our new insurance agents, Gage Mortimer and I, we were trying to figure out, and I shared a little bit with you last time, but that was on my calculations from EMC's premium quotes. And what this spread, well, it's kind of a spreadsheet, this sheet here is from Gage, and he's looking at different things like actual cash value versus replacement cash value. And as I said the last time when we discussed this, we can reduce our insurance premiums. We just increase our risk in doing so. So these are some recommendations that he made after going through each page of our policy. I think it's self-explanatory. We have some older vehicles that we're currently carrying full coverage, including comprehension and collision. And those are below the yellow highlights, where it's not huge money, but you know, a rich guy told me once it takes 10 dimes to make a dollar, so don't walk over a dime. So when we can get a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, it does add up. If we change the values on buildings and different things up at the top, that's the most bang for our money. But I just need to know where the board is on comfortable insurance coverage while also being able to possibly reduce our almost $90,000 premium. And I'll share with you from the KSB insurance, when I did those calculations earlier, we were looking at 21 cents per $1,000 of value as far as insurance costs. The average is 29, and so I was told that we can expect our insurance to continue to increase before we see it flatline. There's been so much loss that they have to get recovered, and then they can stabilize. We're all in one big pool. We may not be in a pool insurance group ourselves, but just the fact that we're with an insurance company makes us part of a big pool. And when they suffer loss, everybody pays. And that's kind of where we are right now. There was enough natural disaster and enough loss within the company that everybody has to pony up to get them back to where they feel they are profitable in operations. So those are just some thoughts. Don't know what you think about it, how you feel about it.
So when we, the 100% like it and the 90% like it, what is it that makes, which part of it makes that change?
We're just taking on 10% of that risk, basically.
Okay.
Reduce the replacement cost of the grade school by $900,000. It was currently valued at $6.78 million, reduced to $5.95 million. The athletic building, which is the, well, that's not a big winner. The district office is currently valued at $1.035 million, and he reduced that down to $558,000. The electronic equipment, we currently on all our computers and things like that, we have $479,000 worth of coverage on. Some of that would fall under the building insurance as contents, so he reduced that to $200,000. We have insurance on the tractor and the zero-turn mowers. I mean, I hate to tell you, but if it hails on the tractor, then the tractor's going to have hail dents in it, you know. The 2000 Bluebird is our maintenance vehicle, and the Suburban, the Traverse, and the Impala is the white, the small white regular car. They all have comprehensive full coverage on them right now, comprehensive inclusion. So those are the different, with 100%, we could save $5,858. If we go to the 90% blanket coverage, it'd be $8,200. It's not exactly significant. I mean, it's not 50% of our insurance premium, you know. But I think some changes would be easy, and those would be that comprehensive inclusion coverage where we should have liability only on some of the vehicles. And if the board would like to stay with the current building values,
It may not be much in 1 year, but you take 3 years at $5,000, we've got a fair amount saved.
maximum premium savings.
I'll go with the 90%.
Do a motion?
I would say that'd probably be good. Whatever we change
I
it.
move we go with the maximum savings you outlined there.
Okay.
I'll second.
David moved and Gina seconded that we adjust our insurance coverage according to addendum 2 to reach the maximum savings of $8,267. So, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Next, we have more track donations. And one was general donation, okay. We have a donation from Post Rock Motel, from Dill, $200, 100 to LES, 100 to LJHS. And then Metner Track, Alfred Offenberg, 10,000, Scott and Rebecca Rathbun, $100, class of 96, 250, and the class of 95, $125. Motion,
Also moved.
okay.
Second?
Seconded by, motion by Gina, seconded by David, that USD 298 Board of Education accept a donation from Post Rock Motel from Dill, $200, 100 to LES, 100 to Lincoln Junior Senior High School, and the following donations for the repair of the track at Metner Field. Alfred Offenberg, $10,000, Scott and Rebecca Rathbun, $100, the class of 1996, $250, and the class of 1995, $125. Any other discussion? I'd like to thank all of them for their generous donations. All in favor of accepting? Opposed? 5-0.
And an update on that, to date, we have received $25,225 in donations.
Okay. We also need to acknowledge that the Post Rock Foundation awarded a $10,000 grant to be used on the track renovation also. So we thank Post Rock for that too. Okay. Next we have Nikki and Renee.
I guess I've been on contract 1 week and here I am already talking to you guys. But I know it's a long ways away, but the reason I'm here, Nikki and I are here, is we need to talk to you about this class of 2022 and potential graduation rate. There is a possible 100% of our students will graduate from Lincoln, or a possible 79% of them will graduate. And if we even want to come close to getting 100%, then we have to consider some options. So that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight. And just for your own knowledge, past graduation percentages, you can see what they are right there. We have yet to achieve 100% graduation rate. I think that would be a great goal to shoot for. And if we're not shooting for 100% graduation rate, I don't know, we might not be doing something quite right in doing that. Also, with the small numbers of class sizes we have, small numbers of students really impact that percentage. So it might be one student, and you get more than that, then that percentage is really affected. In case you're not aware, here are the requirements that it does take to graduate from high school. The state of Kansas has set minimum requirements, and they require 21 credits to get a high school diploma. They require 4 credits of English. However, they do put a clause in there that administration can waive 1 credit, and I'll explain to you where that goes here in a little bit. They require 3 math credits, 3 science credits, 3 history or government credits, the PE and health, 1 fine art, and 6 electives. Board of Educations have the option to require more than the minimum requirements in Kansas. And here at Lincoln, you have set 25 credits for graduation. The only thing that is different is that we require 9 credits for electives, and then the 1 personal finance econ type class. Okay, but that is the only difference in the requirements.
And remember the speech change that we had for this 1 year, since we don't have a speech teacher. So that's a half a credit, which we moved over to the electives for our seniors graduating this year. So that could change as well.
So you might wonder, why are we here talking to you about this? Just so you know how credits work, depending on however many classes the students go to during the day, that's how many credits they can earn through the course of the school year. So depending on where our students are at, they have the opportunity to earn anywhere from 28 to 32 credits. The seniors that are graduating this year, they have the opportunity to earn 30 credits. Their freshman and sophomore year, there were 7 classes during the day, and then last year and this year, there are 8 classes during the day. So they can graduate with 30 credits. They only need 25 to get the Lincoln diploma. However, as much as we would like for everything to be sunshine and rainbows, it's not. And we have students, and we will continue to have students every single year who struggle to reach that 25 credits for whatever reasons that may happen. And we also have students, they might reach the 25 credits, but they have not passed all the required elements. And we also have some school districts did kind of some wonky things during the COVID last year in the way they structured classes. And we have had student transfer in who's missing a quarter of a credit after their entire junior or sophomore year, just because of the way other schools structured things. So we're also kind of facing that, and that's not going to go away for a few more years until we're through all of that. And
Missing a quarter credit of an elective is probably not a big deal. Missing a quarter credit of sophomore English is kind of a problem because our schedule is not flexible enough. We don't have the staff to offer a quarter of a credit because there's a good chance they're required to take another class at that same hour, and that's the only hour that English credit. Now we do have Edgenuity as an option, but it just makes schedule so difficult for some of these students to meet some of those requirements. The ones that transfer in have these transcripts that are just not, they're not good.
And then, you know, Nikki and I can work with those students, and if they're willing to come sit in one of our offices during advisory or lunch once a week, we'll give them an entire year to make up that quarter of a credit, but still the work has to be done. And what we are looking for is to talk to you about moving to a 21 credit graduation path if the student is not going to meet that 25 credit goal. And if we cannot tweak this to make some changes, then our graduation rate could be as low as 79%. And that just really does not look good for us to get that low.
The other number you need to look for as well, and if you go to our Data Central on KSDE, you'll see our graduation rate, which the percentage we showed there, but also some of these students, that affects our dropout rate, which doesn't make us look good either.
Yeah. So then you might ask the question, okay, we already passed 25 credits. Can we make accommodations for certain students? And the answer to that question is yes, you can. If a student enters the first bullet point there, and I have taken this from the KSDE graduation fact sheet, if a child enters DCF custody on their 14th birthday or after, they can request a 21 state requirements diploma. And the thought is if they're in foster care, they might be moving from school to school, and we all know when that happens, gaps happen. We cannot, as a district, we have to honor that if the student has been in foster care. It makes sense. Adult learners, doesn't really apply here, but you can do that for adult learners. The last one there is that school boards can adopt a policy giving the superintendent and or the principal the discretion to waive local graduation requirements that are in excess of the state minimum for students on a case-by-case basis. So this would be very specific for only the students that had gotten themselves in a bit of a jam and weren't going to hit that magic number of 25. So this is what Nikki and I have put together, and we're asking you to consider approving a policy that would allow us to do this. If there are students that mathematically, there is no way that they're going to hit 25 credits by their senior year, if we can move them and place them on a 21 credit path to graduate, okay? Within that, we would also ask that we could add a few more things that could count as credit for those students. For example, in English, if a student, and we have some on student transcripts, it's labeled MTSS English. Well, that is the tiered class. So it is tiered for their level, whatever level that may be. It is still English. Right now, it is not counting as an English credit. We put it as an elective. But if a student is taking that class, it is something they need. And it's still 100% the English curriculum, just at their level, okay? The other piece of the English one would be only if necessary, Nikki would have the ability to waive their 4th English credit if we can pick it up within another piece, and I'll talk to you again about that in a moment. In the math, just like the English, the MTSS math, we would ask that that be allowed to count as a math credit. And since the personal finance econ class would no longer be a graduation requirement, we would like to use that class also as a potential math elective, or a math credit option, because we still want them to take that class. We're not taking that off the board. It just wouldn't be a part of the 21 credit path. And then if a student has taken any type of modified math or general math, again, it's still math. It's just not the algebra, geometry, algebra 2 type path, but it's still math.
And if you remember last spring, we talked about bringing consumer math in, and you guys accepted that is now an exception as a math credit. That's going to help some of our students tremendously. And these are just the students we're talking about that are struggling. Everyone else is going to be required to take personal finance. They're going to be required to meet the 25 credit option.
There is also a place where we can embed credits. In my mind, this would be a worst case scenario, that we would only look to do this if a student were in real jeopardy. Basically what you can do is you can take their 4th English credit, their 3rd math, or their 3rd science credit. And if they are taking an elective class where you would use those skills, then you can embed a science credit in that class. For example, the ag classes that Morgan will be teaching. If a student needed a 3rd science credit and they're doing whatever, plant things, whatever she might be doing in that class, then it would be at Nikki and I's discretion that we could embed that science credit within another class that they are taking. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? And the same is true with math. If they're doing any type of a class that requires measurement or the construction and building things, you can take that 3rd math credit and embed it in. A lot of school districts use this for their kids that are spending a half of a day at some tech school. That they're the whole morning they are there, and then they're just coming to the high school for part of the day. They're embedding a lot of those required classes into kids who are going the CTE route, not the college route. Now, what they do obviously have to pass the class. If they do not pass the elective class, they do not get the other credit. It's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. But you could only do that on elective classes. Does that make sense on the embedding of the credits?
And this would probably be an extreme major. We were hoping that we could get them there doing the other options that we just discussed, and this would be this extreme. Another option would be like if they're doing a work study, hypothetically saying that they were working for the newspaper in the afternoon and they're writing stories, that could be their English credit.
And then the last piece that we've talked about that goes with this is if we move a student to this credit path, we would still like them to be able to walk at graduation. Because I think that is an important thing, because they are earning a diploma. It might be a little different, but they are still earning a high school diploma. A student on this path would, if you want to go onto the next screen, the diploma that they would be issued, at the top where it says Kansas State Diploma, correct me if I'm wrong, Nikki, but the ones that the students currently get, say Lincoln High
Yep.
diploma,
Mhm.
that is the only difference. And then under the state seal, you put the issued by, and everything's the same. You guys still sign it exactly the same. The student can take this for any job or anything that requires high school diploma, because they are still earning a high school diploma. It's just not the 25 credit standards that you have set.
Ours currently says, it says met requirements set by, and ours says Kansas State Department of Education and Lincoln, or I think it says school board, or Lincoln High School, something like that. So theirs would just say it met Kansas State Department, and we're issuing it on behalf of the Kansas State Department of Education.
And this is obviously one I borrowed and just put a few things in, so it might not exactly look like that, but that's kind of the idea of how it would be. Okay, so now what are we going to do? What is going to be our part? Well, to be honest with you, the seniors that are in this boat, there's nothing we can do right now at this moment to change that, except to try to help them get those 21 credits. Otherwise, they're not going to graduate. But what we're going to do is we're going to commit to having regular meetings with those students. And the second piece under there is huge. Any student that is taking the Edgenuity Credit Recovery class, they are not going to be put into the library. They are going to be in a classroom. With Mrs. Petit is the classroom that we're going to use, and she and I are going to tag team and both be in there most of the time. There will only be few circumstances if we both have something that hour that we have to do, that it will not be either one of us. But we feel very important that a classroom teacher is with those students, and setting up whatever we need to set up with them, reward systems, just sitting beside them and helping them through it so they can get those credits caught up. And then obviously if there's any student we need to move to the 21 credit path, we will contact parents for that, and we will talk with them about that, explain to them what is happening, especially if a student is in a situation where mathematically, after the 8 credits at the end of this year, even if they passed everything, they're not going to get to 25. And then I think some new practices need to be put into place. I have a credit check sheet that is filled out for every high school student, and every semester that will be updated and filled out. And the idea is to get them before their senior year, to get them their sophomore year and their junior year and say, hey, if you want to graduate, then you have to do this. Nikki and I are working on a visual presentation for the freshmen's first day, and talk about all of the pieces of the puzzle it takes to get that high school diploma, to make them understand, I mean, you have to pass this or you're not going to graduate. The other thing is the IPS, the Individual Plan of Study. We already have a lot of that in place. We have to verify and prove that a lot of those things are in place by, I believe it's fall of 2022, and if not, then our accreditation can start being dinged by that. We already have a lot of it going. We just need to get it all centralized and make sure we're getting the required documents in there. A part of that IPS is 4-year course mapping, and then of course any at-risk students, Nikki and I will be working with them as much as we possibly can. And in extreme cases, look for workplace experiences where we could embed those credits for students if they need that.
Just to add a few things, first, Renee has been working like weeks above her contract to put together and come up with this plan on top, and notice that there are numerous kids that are in a situation that might not graduate in May. Plus some of our juniors and sophomores aren't on the track either. So kudos to Renee for coming forward with this to give this an option for our students. The second piece, I think there's a misconception with many of our students as they enter high school. I've seen it as a teacher. They don't understand, they can't understand until, for some reason, until they get to be a senior when the news is finally broke to them. They don't understand because they might not have did well in junior high, they might not have done well in elementary school, but we continue to pass them along. Am I saying we should retain them? No. I'm just saying that in their mind, as long as I come every day and I do what I'm supposed to do, even if I don't do well, I'm going to get to the end. When they hit their freshman year, they can't grasp the fact that they have to pass these credits. Hopefully we talk to them and we come up with a plan that they somehow show them that you have to meet these requirements to graduate, and we don't get to the end of the road as a senior. That has been kind of the case with so many students. The second piece of this is the individual plan of study. Lincoln has been ahead of the game. We did not know that this was going to be a requirement, but we were way ahead of the game with our advisory, our student-led conferences. We've been doing all of these things that the state is now requiring. So, great job to the high school staff for putting some of those things together and putting them in place, because we are now ahead of the game, and we have those. We just kind of need to tighten up some things and tidy it so that it meets the state's requirement, but we already have a lot of these in place.
Questions for us?
Not to take in.
Yes, it is. And I just want to, it's very unfortunate that we have several kids in this situation, but if we do not do something to change things on our end, then we're going to get a ding on our graduation rate for this year, this senior class.
And we're ultimately failing those, we as adults are failing those children.
Yes.
The 21 would be for, you just make a blanket 21 for everybody and not have to keep track of it?
No.
We would still have the same requirements for all. The goal is, as a freshman, you come in, you're required to get 25 credits. Things happen, kids get transferred in, students don't have the best road sometimes, and so this would give them an option when we get to, as a junior, and we're like, things aren't looking good for you, we're going to put you on this other path. So you still have a high school diploma under your belt, but it might not say Lincoln High School.
And the sophomores that failed some classes as freshmen, the juniors that failed some classes as freshmen and or sophomores, they're already enrolled in the credit recovery class now. And the idea is they get themselves out of that. And at enrollment, with the parent and the student, as many as came in, I'm saying your child has to take this class to make up from last year, but if they get finished with it for semester, then they can go into an elective. But if not, they're here. So we're trying really hard to not get it to the point where it's the seniors, and we will be working with those kids, and we want to try to get them now. And we will be keeping track of eligibility, students that are not passing classes, and they'll see me coming down the hall, and they may say, oh no, here she comes again. She's going to ask me why I'm not turning my assignments in. That's my personal goal, is these kids that are not passing classes, I'm going to be their best friend.
We have to learn to shift our mindset. When I was in high school 20 years ago, it was go to college, go to college, go to college. 4-year college. That's not what we need to. It's not a blanket anymore. There's so many different kids and there's so many different avenues, and we have to be able to recognize that and give options for all of our students. We have kids that would be so successful on a GoTech path. Do they need Algebra 2? Probably not. And that's why we brought last spring the consumer math option. A kid that's going to be an engineer, yes, he does or she does. So we need to give these different avenues to our kids, because we have a wide array of them, and there's many options outside of high school that option or give that. So we have GoTech, community college. We can't just continue to funnel them into this 4-year college, because that's not how things work anymore.
And in my experience, the kids that are college bound, they're college bound no matter what we do. They are on that path. The kids that need our help are the ones who most likely are not college bound, and they're just not sure what they want to do with their life. Those are the kids that need our help.
I would add, Gina and John joined me to go hear Randy Watson talk with his Kansas Can tour again. And it was funny because we're pushing redesign, but we're not really redesigning. And if you have starting in 8th grade, you start taking interest inventories through this Zello program, a kid starts seeing things that maybe fit their personality or their likes and things like that. And what Randy said, Dr. Watson, was that we just keep jamming them through the round hole, and it doesn't matter what shape they are. They can be square, round, or triangular, and we're jamming them through a round hole because almost every high school except the cutting-edge redesigned schools still are a college prep course. Something that he shared though, that was funny, do you know why we do Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 in that order? Because about 150 years ago, that's what colleges said we should do. Do you know why we do biology, chemistry, and physics? Because about 100 years they didn't know what to do, so they said, let's do it alphabetically. That's the reason. There's no reason a freshman couldn't take chemistry if they had the math skills. They could take physics, but because of tradition, and tradition is the hardest thing to break. And I fought, I don't want to say I planted this seed, but you know, I fought hard, and that state diploma was from my old high school. Because if a kid can do an interest inventory and they have an idea of what they want to do, why are we the blockade to their success? We should be getting them to Salina Tech, to NCK Tech, or to Cloud County, and let them graduate. Even when I was in 2 districts ago, an hour away, we drove kids to Washburn University to their tech center, and some of those seniors graduated with a diesel mechanic certification and a high school diploma at the same time. If that is their interest, then we have to decide, are we the encouragers or are we the roadblock? Because how many kids are we talking senior class, 5 or 6 that maybe mathematically cannot graduate? Why should they even come? If we're not willing to meet them and do whatever we can to make them successful, you know, so I think that's that big global thinking of every student is an individual human being and how do we best serve them? That's the motive behind the individual plan of study, the IPS. We had a document that was Success for All, and it was a college graduate and a tech center-minded student. And the first thing that they all went to was the IPS. That's what determined their path. And at that point, you decided what was applicable to their success, not to our crossbar.
When Renee and I sat down to do this, we looked up KSE, anybody can look it up, our graduation percentages. I've been the senior class sponsor since I got here, so those are my kids right there, my seniors. And 1 kid, 2 kids, I can tell you exactly which class. I know that I can see the faces of those percentages of what kid didn't graduate, and we could have prevented that. Like, we could have given them a high school diploma had we had this in place. They were missing it by 1 credit.
Let me correct your terminology a second. They could have earned a high school diploma if they had a pathway to go down.
Thanks.
We still don't, 21 credits doesn't mean we're giving a high school diploma. They have to earn 21 credits.
I thought you wanted to say something.
I liked the statement that you made that not everybody is going to college. That's a given, and like you said, that has been forced down so many people's throats. You're going, and they get there and they hate it. You know, don't succeed, whatever, decide to go somewhere else. So I think if you could start here, helping them get where they need to be as individuals, having success. I
And,
think that's where you need to be.
you know, mathematically, we're going to have some seniors that would need to switch to the 21 credits. Mathematically, there might be a junior that may end up in that situation, a junior or 2 for next year. But our hope, as you go through this, is it's few and far between that we're actually needing to make that transition. We want to keep them on those 25 requirements as much as possible.
transitioning some of these classes like we've done, that's the start. I think by doing that, we can still keep them on the path, freshmen, sophomores, on that path of the 25 credit. I don't want to take away from our high school diploma. 25 credits, that's what we set, that's a standard, we need to stick with it. However, again, not every kid is a circle that we're trying to shove through. So we might have to make adjustments as we go in that we are making baby steps in that process right now.
You said 8 credits a year is what we're looking at currently.
Depending on how many hours we offer, that seems to change. You know, last year we went to block schedule, then we kept the 8 hours. You know, a couple of years ago we were at 7 hours.
Yeah.
But just to give a round figure of 4 years,
Yeah,
7 or 8.
7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah, and so they have the opportunity for anywhere from 28 to 32, depending on where they come in at.
Any other questions, discussion? To clarify, you're looking for a chance to work with this year's seniors or to work with anybody from here on out that could possibly need this?
Yeah, this isn't gonna be our standard. Our standard's still 25, but we want this as an avenue for kids that maybe can't reach that 25 credit.
Okay.
Hopefully they won't really know that.
Yes,
It
yes,
would be a last resort.
Yes, it's
type
a last
of thing.
resort.
yes.
And if you notice, the Lincoln High School and the Kansas State, they still require, you know, 3 math, 3 science for English. But those things have not changed. It just might be the path in which they get there is a little bit different. If you guys, what we would do is then come back with an actual policy if this is something that we would have written up, that we could put into place in our handbook.
And since all that core content is the same, and it's the electives that are different, it gives them time in the day to take away electives to make sure that their core content work is done. You know, you get to be at a certain grade level and you failed a previous class, well, guess what? You just lost the opportunity for 1 elective. So now you're taking 2 math classes this year, or now you're taking 2 science or 2 English. So even with 21, it doesn't mean they're only going to be there 3 years.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And the other piece of that is asking to count some of the other classes as math electives. For example, if I have a senior who is 2 credits short in math, that math is not their forte, we can enroll them in the consumer math class, but then also count the personal finance class as a second math credit to give them their 3, 4, whatever they need. If they get to their senior and they're short 2, that's tough.
I'm glad we are working harder and harder doing this. I just don't want it to be a cop-out, and before we know it, we've watered down our requirements so much that they don't need it.
And I was the same when I sat down with her. I was very leery about, because you could just give them a Lincoln High School diploma. And I told her I don't want to take what a Lincoln High School diploma means away from the kids that earned the 25 credits. And that's why I was more, because you could do either way, the way we presented, or you could just give them a Lincoln High School diploma. I don't want to take value of what that means.
And we agree 100% with what you said. And that's why it's only a case-by-case, absolute. They've dug themselves a hole, and there's no way they're going to get out of it unless we throw them a rope.
And they're still going to have to earn it.
Yeah.
We can only take them so far. They're still going to have to earn it.
And we may have a couple that don't, but we would like to try our best.
And I think you put a point to it there, that early identification is
Yes.
important. And that's setting up the structure and teaching them accountability,
Mhm.
guiding them through it, because you're right, some are college bound, they are going to have maybe support from home to know exactly what they need to do to get accomplished to get to a point. But having the support and the accountability, this is what you need to do. I think that is very, very important. So I'm very happy about the structure that you're
Yes.
talking about.
guess that's where I was curious where we were headed with this, because if it's gonna be policy from here on out, maybe should maybe something that way, if it's a case by case for this year.
And I don't think we've seen the last of at-risk students, you know. So I think this will be an ongoing challenge.
My understanding is still going to be implemented.
Yes, we are ongoing. Would we be okay, you bring back some policy if we're all in agreement that this is somewhere we can head? And then next month we can approve some policy that
Yes.
fits.
Yeah, and not to rush by any means, but we do have seniors that, so the sooner that we can move forward or not move forward, that at least puts these kids that are seniors on the right path, and Renee can kind of guide them to make.
Okay.
We can write something up
I was gonna
next
say,
month.
is there some motion that we want to approve this year's seniors tonight, and then we approve that policy for getting ahead?
I would love that, personally. I'd like to go ahead and get started on this.
Because we would already like to go ahead and make the parent contacts, let them know so that everybody's on the same team
Okay.
and know what is expected for the kids to get there.
Okay.
I would make a motion, John, that we allow Nikki and Renee to pursue the 21 credit graduation option for the 21-22 school year. And then look at a permanent solution on a case-by-case basis, yes.
Okay. Yes.
That's for just a senior this year until we see the finished policy.
For the class of 2020, or for the class of 22.
Yeah. We can give something more permanent.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion by Gina, seconded by Patty, that the Board of Education approve 21 credits for graduation on a case-by-case basis as determined by the building principal and the counselor for the class of 2022. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? 6-0. Okay, thank you guys for your
Thank you
presentation.
very much.
Thank you, Renee, for getting into all of that. I'm sure there's many kids that will thank you too.
They might not know it yet.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they might not know it yet, they might like
Parents.
Brendan to Brendan.
If they aren't running.
Yes. Okay, next we have a calendar change. We need to approve an early release of students for the MPL tournament. We have January 14th, 2022 at 1 p.m., January 18th, 2022 at 2 p.m., and January 21st, 22 at 2 p.m. If there is inclement weather, the board approves an early release on a rescheduled tournament day.
I so move.
Okay, ready? Okay, motion by Patty, seconded by Bree, that the Board of Education approve early release of students for the MPL tournament, MPL basketball tournament on January 14th, 2022 at 1 p.m., on January 18th, 2022 at 2 p.m., and January 21st, 2022 at 2 p.m. If there is inclement weather, the Board of Education approves an early release on the rescheduled tournament day. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 6-0. And then we need a motion to approve National Honor Society induction ceremony, which would be a Wednesday evening, October 6th at 6 p.m. Okay, TJ? Gina? Motion by TJ, seconded by Gina, that the Board of Education approve the National Honor Society induction ceremony being held on Wednesday evening, October 6th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 6-0. by Gina, seconded by Bree, that the Board of Education approve September 13th, 2021, which is our next board meeting, as the revenue neutral rate hearing and the 2021-2022 budget hearing date. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, 6-0. Okay. Administrators reports. Don't think we have any. So we will move on to superintendent's report.
So I don't have very much, not much has happened just yet. I did go to Topeka for a budget review. I think I may have mentioned that prior to. And just so the board is aware, with revenue neutral rate and the new budget laws, there's a totally different timeline. That's why we're having our hearing even in September. So currently, we don't need to get our budget submitted to the State Board of Education until September 20. It's usually been much earlier than that, and to the district, to the county clerk before October 1. So those dates have pushed back because of all the new laws pertaining to budget. Just some building updates. We're currently working on getting new playground mulch. Hopefully we can get that done before school starts. We have some volunteers with large trucks that are willing to drive to West Suntown, west of Salina, and pick up playground mulch. We're just trying to coordinate the quantity that we need. The cafeteria is done in the elementary school. The building was removed. Thank you, David Bell, for that. If you haven't gone by, that corner of the lot is starting to look much less cluttered. It looks really good. I appreciate your efforts with that. I know there were some challenges to that. And you saw with our walkabout tonight, the trees and the needs at the high school. Tomorrow, as part of our back to school, there is a special speaker that I met about a month or so ago in Lawrence, and he's going to be speaking from 1:30 to 2:30. You are more than welcome to attend. And then the Meet the Teacher dinner Thursday night at LES, and you're more than welcome to attend that, as well as the head count that I have been given is 300 plus that I'm cooking hot dogs for, so you're more than welcome to attend. The temperature should be cooler by Thursday, right? Like in the 70s? I was just gonna roll the hot dogs out on the asphalt and just go pick one up, but, you know, I'm trying to find a barbecue grill and something to transport over there to cook, but then we will be dining and showing off the new cafeteria. That's where the food line will be, and then meeting the teacher at 6:30 to 7:30, so if you're free and you wanna come by, you're more than welcome. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions for Scott? Comments? Okay. Next, we have an executive session for personnel.
I move we go into executive session for personnel for 30 minutes.
Motion by David,
I second it.
seconded by Gina, that the USD 298 Board of Education go into executive session at 8:35 for 30 minutes with the superintendent for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel, and that the Board of Education return to open meeting at 9:05 in the Board of Education conference room. The executive session is required to protect the privacy of non-elected personnel